Well, glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. Here we are on the walk around the graveyard. I started recording one thing and then I realized I really wanted to talk about another, which is this trucker convoy really does show you how our system has been completely overwhelmed and completely corrupted by wealth. That the capitalist class has overwhelmed our systems, and we are no longer really capable of actually responding rationally to crises, to what is actually happening on the ground. And the trucker convoy, in my view, is completely indicative of this. Like, we as Canadians are undergoing several crises all at once, which are all really just one crisis, which is the crisis of the death of capital. But a climate change crisis where we are en route to destroy the species, a housing crisis so we can't even feed and clothe our own citizens, the overt homelessness crisis that is becoming worse by the day, the spiking poverty, 60% of Canadians saying that they are struggling to put food on their table. 60% of Canadians saying that. And our political apparatus is inert, doing nothing about it of any merit whatsoever, because it's been completely overwhelmed and corrupted by capitalism, which exists now only to assert itself. It doesn't exist in order to help anyone. It doesn't exist in order to do anything except exist and grow for the sake of it. That's what capitalism is doing now, and they don't care what they destroy along the way. Our media, of course, has also been completely overwhelmed. I think part of the success of this channel and part of the reason why this channel is growing is because our mainstream, what's called mainstream media, but is really just corporate media, has been completely overwhelmed by capital. So it's incapable of responding rationally to what's going on in the world. Take the trucker convoy, for example. Here you have a group of what you could call small business owners, right? They own these semis, they own these trucks, right? They've put their chips into the capitalist death cult in the small scale way. And they're going and they're having a protest so that they can reopen the economy. You know, get back to Timmy's and get back to Denny's is really what their goal is. And the Conservative Party, of course, has swept up in support of the protest, while the Liberals are condemning the protest for its neo-Nazi symbolism. In this way, the populace once again gets divided. That the working class is fighting amongst itself, which is the goal, ultimately. That you want to create a Conservative Party that is so repugnant that the populace says, oh, well, if we don't vote Liberal, then the Conservative will get in, right? And in this way, the capitalists continue to keep power within their own hands. They continue to operate and own the society. They don't really care if you hate the Conservatives who work for them exclusively. They don't really care if the Conservatives are hated and reviled, right? In fact, the more hated they can become, the better, because they act as a terrorizing force in the society, chasing people into the hands of the much more appealing Liberal Party that is also just another edifice of capital, that it exists to subserviate itself to capital, and that is what it does. This dynamic has now infected even the NDP, who exists as another option for liberalism, that should everyone suddenly swing over to Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, what you would find is a somewhat softer, somewhat more responsive version of liberalism, that all of the problems, the housing crises, the climate change disaster, all of these things would continue to be completely ignored, right? But the platitudes would become more aggressive. The piecemeal reformism would become more prominent, right? The token gestures would become more gracious, right? And that, because that's fundamentally what we vote for here in Canada. We vote for the most persuasive liar. That's who we're voting for. We're not actually voting for people who are attempting to help us. We're not actually voting for people who are interested at all in improving the society. We are voting for the most persuasive liar. And I've come to a point where I think that we know that, right? Which is why I think Pierre Poilievre is actually the most dangerous conservative we've seen yet, because he's a very persuasive liar. And Canadians respect that. So it's very likely that he will mount a meaningful challenge to the Liberal Party because of it. This all leads me, of course, to the inevitable conclusion, and something that you'll never hear reported or said on mainstream media, that this is one of the great sins of the media, which is that it will never actually finally ask the question, when is a revolution necessary? When do you actually need to come together as a people and actually say, hey, our system has been completely overwhelmed. Our system no longer actually functions. And our system does not actually function, right? All of our political parties are neoliberal capitalist parties. They've all been completely overwhelmed by capital. There isn't an option to go vote for anyone else. Should a leftist party actually begin to arise from the populace in order to challenge people internally, it will be crushed by capital through the many methods it has to actually destroy. And we've seen the capitalist death cult simply assassinate people before, and it will continue to operate in such a way. Should anyone actually threaten their power in meaningful ways. At this point, the only option we have left as a populace is to surround the halls of power, just as these truckers are doing. As a side note, I always do find it funny that when leftists go out and protest, it's for things like the climate change catastrophe, cops are murdering people in the streets, hey, there's a homelessness crisis, poverty is bad, there's a housing crisis, even stuff like animal rights, right? When that's what happens when leftists protest. When right-wingers protest, it's everybody should go back to work, let's go back to Denny's. This subservient slavery mindset of our masters are good people and we should subserviate ourselves to them. But the protest has been effective. It has galvanized the news media, it's gotten attention, and we should do the same as leftists. We should surround the halls of power and begin redrawing our Constitution. I'm actually more or less of the opinion that we should begin redrawing our Constitution now. Our Constitution does not protect people. It says, quote unquote, protect the security of people, but that means don't let an army come in and blow you up exclusively. If your system, if your rulers want to abandon you to poverty and homelessness, that's fine. The Constitution doesn't give a fuck about that. If your ruling class wants to abandon you to a climate change catastrophe and watch as your cities get burnt down, it's fine with that. It doesn't care at all. So we need to redraw our Constitution to explicitly protect people from things like homelessness, from things like poverty, from things like climate change catastrophe. We need to round up the disinformation liars who have been lying to us as they have been, and they've admitted to it, about climate change, and put them in jail at bare minimum. But that isn't going to happen if all we do is continue to put a ballot in a ballot box or even run for office, right? Because of the overwhelming corrupting force of capital, because they own the political apparatus and they aren't going to relinquish it. They're not going to simply let people have it. They're not going to allow people to go into the halls of power and meaningfully change anything. And so what we need to do is surround the halls of power, redraw the Constitution, and declare the old Constitution illegitimate and the power structure illegitimate. Because it is. It has become fundamentally illegitimate. It's not responding to the needs of the populace, the 60% of people saying that they're struggling to get food. It's not responding to the homelessness and the housing crisis. It's not responding to the climate change crisis rationally. For God's sakes, in regards to the climate change crisis, the system is literally lying to us while making the problem worse. That's the position we're in. And it's all because we have a capitalist class that has overwhelmed and dominated us. And the media system that exists in our society is doing everything it can to maintain that power and maintain that control. We've got to fight back. All right, guys, always remember, you are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes that you don't realize it, so that you'll just stay the good little commodity that you are. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're gonna need it.